All right, welcome to episode 80 of the At Bat Podcast presented by War Media, where we give you our thoughts on the latest Chicago baseball news, as well as take a trip around the league. I am Saul Rodriguez, joined by the whole cast of At Bat All-Stars here. We got Gabe Wilkins, who has his own podcast, The State of Gabe. We got Miles Porter out there at Northwestern. We got Chris Pennant, who, of course, he hasn't been on the show in a minute, but he's doing this thing at CHGO. And he's got his own podcast, the Skyhook Podcast. He's been on Jeopardy. He's been everywhere. So glad to have him back. And how you doing, Chris? And honestly, tell us, man. With you being on Jeopardy, made it. If for all those who don't know, Chris Pennant on Jeopardy made it to the finals. How was that experience, man?
It was cool. Just straight up, it was cool. Not to undersell it, but I wanted to be on Jeopardy since I was a kid, like very young. And so getting on the first time was amazing in itself. But as I said on the show, I could not get any sleep for like the previous 3 days before that because I moved on Sunday night over in West Loop. There's a story about that I can tell sometime, but suffice it to say, I didn't get to sleep until like 3 because I was moving.
Mad respect for going out there and you did a hell of a job. So that's awesome, and
You
definitely
know what?
love to have you here, man.
I'll say like y'all are veterans of sports and others. I think just being able to do this, you get to know what it's like to be under lights or on the spot. But if you get an answer wrong and then the people around you get on a roll, you get you get sucked into the quicksand where you're just like start second guessing yourself like, is that right? Is was that Mark McGuire or was that Sammy Sosa? And the buzzer is the hardest thing. So if you ever take the test, just practice on anything you can, like get some fast twitch video games, start playing Gears of War again, anything that you could do to like get your buzzer finger up, because that's the one thing that separates the best from the best, you know?
Yeah, that's crazy because I don't think people think about that in general, and also just like the mindset you have to have is crazy. So yeah, that's awesome, bro. And yeah, thanks for coming out. Like I told you, and I've said it before, you're doing your thing with CHGO, and we're seeing that with the Chicago Sky Podcast. So that's awesome. So thanks for coming out, man. And of course, we'll have you on plenty more times. Of course, the baseball season coming up, So it's good. And Gabe, how you doing, man? How's everything going? How's your New Year, man? Yeah, Happy New Year to everybody too.
Yeah, most importantly, Happy New
Yeah.
Year. Blessing to be seen in 2024, and alive and well, especially after you done lost so many people. But through it all, man, I'm not complaining, and just got to get used to this new week because I'm not used to like New Year's falling on Mondays a lot.
Yeah.
So that kind of throw me in for a loop a little bit. But outside of that, I'm doing well, man. I cannot complain. I'm too blessed to be stressed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And yeah, it's that is one thing. Yeah, just having to write 24 is it's always this first week where you're like, damn, I gotta like, damn, it's and then you just think
Yeah,
about all
that
these
too.
things and it throws you off so crazy. But hey, Miles, how you doing, man? How's everything going? How's the New Year?
Hey man, it was good. It was good. Back in the office. It was too hot yesterday. Now it's too cold everywhere. But hey, 2024, I got the Mamba year, bro. Starting live ABs in a few weeks, ready to get it going. Looking forward to hitting the field again in a few months. So I'm ready. Start the season now, damn it.
Yes, sir. 2024 Milwaukee Jaguars year. You already know. You already know that if you don't know now, you know. So love to see it, Miles. Hell yeah. And with the baseball season coming up, honestly, we'd love to say there's a lot to talk about. There really isn't a whole much, especially with Chicago baseball. It's just nothing has really happened. I mean, I'll say this: there's more to talk about I will say this: there's more to talk about with the White Sox than it is the Cubs, because obviously the Cubs haven't spent really much of a dollar on free agency there. And the White Sox they've been signing guys. I mean, this week they signed Chris Flexen. Last week they signed Martin Maldonado, who me and Miles talked about. But I definitely want to get your guys' side from the White Sox. So we'll start there. We'll start with the White Sox, with obviously Chris being on, like getting your guys is a take on the latest signings, but as well as Chris, since you haven't been on, what have you thought of like the approach that the White Sox have been taking this offseason? Because say what you want, and I've told Gabe this, say what you want. I think a lot of White Sox fans will be like, oh, we're not signing anybody, notable, like who cares, blah, blah, blah. But like from the other side of town, like I'd rather have my team signing players. I don't care who they are. Like if you're showing an effort to get some guys out there, that says it all. I think Chris gets, if anything, he's been active, and I think that says something to the fan base, even though you can make an argument that he's not trying to get a big fish or whatever. But what have you thought about the approach on free agency, as well as not moving Dylan Cease yet? Because I mean, that's something that people have been talking about the whole offseason as well, whether he's going to be moved or they're going to hold him, whatever. What have you thought about all that, man?
My partner Jenna, I always joke with her that I apologize for getting her into being a White Sox fan, which she says, and she's her own person. It's true. Like she's a very intelligent woman, and she went to games before without me with her friends. But I feel like when we started dating for serious, and I had my season ticket still, then she started getting into it, and so now she's sending me like all transactions, like screenshots of transactions. And every time she sends it to me, I want to be like, "Yo, that shit doesn't matter, bro." I get so mad. And it's of course not her fault. It's not any White Sox fan's fault. The team decided to just 2 years ago, they were just kind of like, you know what? We don't really care. We kind of care, but we don't really care. If MLB was a group project, the White Sox are that dude who like wrote their name on the paper and said like, oh yeah, you know what? I remember the Krebs cycle from chemistry last year, and then they were doing something else. I swear. The only Chris Flexen is interesting to me because he had a couple of decent years in Seattle, but I checked his stats from last year, and 1 year is 1 year. But I don't. He's a buy low guy who they're kind of hoping would have a bounce back year. And with this administration, even though I haven't seen Chris Getz's team hit the field yet, I feel like the White Sox are hoping that they can flip that guy for cash considerations, because that's the name of a Jerry Reinsdorf organization in the last 15 years. They hit on something big almost by accident, and then if they can get cash considerations out of it, that's what they do. The Max Stassi trade with the Braves, which we not coming to yet, but that was Max Stassi and cash considerations for the all too infamous player to be named later. In a like, if it was a movie script, Max Stassi is going to have like a brilliant first half, and then the Braves are going to be like, yo, let's get that man back. So Max Stassi will be one of the like 6 guys in history to have been traded for himself, because he'll be the player to be named later or something like that. So I didn't expect them to spend big. And you're right. He's making moves. Chris Getz is making moves. They've been talking about Martin Maldonado for a few years now, I think, just as a guy who is a dependable backstop, a good defensive catcher, and a guy who will get into people's faces, is why Sox fans fully are aware of. But as a needle moving transactions, I don't see it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't blame you, and I mean, I think it's just one of those things where like for as much as there has been speculation all offseason about what each team is going to do and all that, it's like, yeah, it's where are they going? What's the direction of this? And I think a lot of the things, especially with the White Sox, has been like, Dylan Cease this, even Luis Robert, whether they're real rumors or not, talked about it, which I think is ridiculous. And I think that would happen anyway. But Gabe, what's your take on the Chris Flexen thing, as well as anything that Chris has said as well about the offseason and how the White Sox are handling it?
They're going bargain bin shopping. I mean, it's not hard to really figure out what's going on. Chris Flexen is a guy who, as Chris alluded to, he had a couple decent seasons in Seattle, went to Colorado, and his ERA went up. And that's a common trend that you see with pitchers that go to pitch in Colorado, in Coors Field, where the altitude is high and the ball travels a country mile. So as a result, you don't really know what you're going to get out of Chris Flexen. It's a 1-year deal. It's a gamble move, but it's also stockpiling in an area where the White Sox were relatively weak last year, and that's starting pitching and getting a ton of depth. When you have young arms in the minors that have yet to come up and are not proven, such as Jake Eder, Nick Nasrini, who is regarded as one of the top prospects in the system alongside of Eder, and Christian Mena, you have to get some veteran guys to eat up innings. And that's what I think Chris Flexen will be doing here. My only question is what will his role be long term? Is he going to be one of those back of the line starters? Is he going to be a guy that comes out of the bullpen? Because what I see happening is competition for a few spots. As far as with Dylan Cease, I think the market is at a standstill, and the White Sox can't afford to trade him for pennies on a dollar. So if you're going to trade him to a team that's willing to give you back 2, if not 3 top 100 prospects in return to fill needs that you need to have at the big league level soon or within the immediate year or two, then you're not going to move him. So, when I look at what the White Sox are doing their bargain bin shopping, Martin Maldonado, it's a good move, but it's like Chris said, it's not a move that shifts the needle or automatically makes the White Sox contenders in the American League Central. That will still be available enough for the taking, depending on who wants it, especially when majority of the teams in the division don't want to spend the money. And I think that's why White Sox fans are very frustrated, is because they haven't committed to spending the money long term and shoring up positions that haven't been showing up for the last decade and a half, such as right field and second base. And then you add shortstop to it with Tim Anderson being a free agent. It leaves a lot to be desired. So even with Costa Montgomery soon to be coming up. So, I mean, they're just going bargain bin shopping. I do give Chris Getz credit for this, though. He's improved the defense. And that was something that has been an issue on the South Side for the last several years.
Yeah, no, that's true. And I think also when you are bargain shopping, you might run into something positive. I mean, some people have been saying, who knows what we could expect from Paul DeJong. But I mean, I personally have seen probably the best of Paul DeJong on the other side of, on the other side of the rivalry with the Cardinals. So like, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, he's a big league guy, and like, why not give him some at bats? Who knows? I mean, he had a little bit of a hot stretch with the Giants last year. So it's like, we'll see what happens. But as Chris mentioned as well, you said it's like, yeah, when you're getting guys like these, obviously, if they get hot, they're good to trade. So I understand that aspect for sure, no doubt. Because I mean, when you're in the position the White Sox are in. So, Miles, what are your thoughts too on what the White Sox have been doing, not only the whole offseason, but just like what direction do you think they're going in overall?
Yeah, I mean, I respect. I think coming from what we're kind of dealing with on the north side, I just respect kind of like the simple moves that the Sox are making at the moment, and whether they're impactful or not in terms of long term or even this coming season, we'll figure out. But I do like that there's been some moves that have been made. I do like Chris Flexen, and I'm very high on Martin Maldonado just as a catcher who works very well with pitchers. I like it. I like it, especially for a franchise who has seen quite the dramatic dip over the past few seasons. Good for them.
Miles. You're trash.
It's I got to word things a little bit differently today. I'm at the office. You know how I usually get. Was that my boss? Hey, no. No, but I mean, I like it. I like that they're doing something. They're making small moves here and there, and I hope that they do address a few more areas going forward. But for the most part, time will tell, and I still feel bad for Sox fans.
Well, I'm gonna say this real quick on feeling bad for Sox fans. I feel bad for Sox fans. Don't get me wrong. I'm a Sox fan, but we knew the rules when we got in this shit. We knew there wasn't nothing guaranteed. We from the South Side. I mean, it's always been that way, and
Yeah.
and we know the ownership group, what they're willing to do and what they're not willing to do, and it's getting to a point where in the 2020s decade, at some point you're gonna have to spend $100+ million on a player. The question is who? I think it happens this year? Hell no. It's gonna be hard to convince guys to want to come here following what has transpired over the last 2 years, because the White Sox have become the epitome of how not to go about handling a rebuild. You can't just build a house halfway and not finish the foundation of it. And that's what they've done. And when you talk about Martin Maldonado, he's a guy that is a solid veteran. I think he'll bring leadership to the clubhouse, and he's good for the simple standpoint of the fact that he'll be able to manage young pitchers, which you're going to see a lot of in Chicago. But like with Dylan Cease, the whole thing, I know some fans don't want him gone. I know some fans are like, well, you trade him. I'm 50-50 with that, but at the same time, you have no choice really but to trade him because of you didn't fulfill areas of concern that could have helped you get to the top a couple of seasons ago. And a guy like Maldonado, I mean, it kind of feels like a too little too late move if we're going to be blunt about it, because I remember Game 4 of the ALDS in 2021. Rodon did not trust his off-speed stuff because of who was behind the plate. And we all know who was behind the plate, and that was Yasmani Grandal.
Yeah, no, and you make some great points there. I mean, especially with the catching, and I've seen White Sox Twitter and what they've said about Maldonado and all that, and the hitting and the defense has gone down. Hasn't been as good as other years and all that. But at least from the one thing that you can get, I think you can guarantee is what Miles said with with the handling the young pitchers and he's almost like having another coach on there, which I know sounds like he's not good enough to be on the field, but at the same time, it's true. Some players are like half manager, half players, the way they are. So it's like even kind of like we saw that even with Evan Longoria didn't play that much with Diamondbacks. He had some moments in the World Series, but I think a lot of players talked about him, like even like another coach, like he's out there, showing guys how it's done, and you love to see it. So Maldonado, I think, will definitely be also not only that, but if the White Sox, whenever they consider bringing up Quiero, the catcher they got in the Angels deal, maybe that's somebody he can put on, under his wing and see what happens. But yeah, no, I definitely agree with you on that, with the catching situation, with the defense as well, Gabe, as you mentioned before. So another thing too is as we move over to the north side of Chicago, I mean, there hasn't been much there as well, but I do want to get you guys' thoughts on that because, they set their coaching staff and the Cubs did, and with Craig Counsell under the helm and there's still other options out there. I mean, Cody Bellinger's still a free agent. People have talked about how he might, still be an option for the Cubs and all that. But Chris, what has been your thoughts on the lack of moves lack of movement for the Cubs? Not only the Craig Counsell thing was cool at the beginning, and we Cubs fans loved it, but now there's nothing has happened. They missed out on Ohtani. Not that he was ever going to come, but they missed out on Ohtani. They really weren't in the Yamamoto sweepstakes at all. So what are your thoughts on what has gone on with the Cubs, as well as if they're still in the if you think that Bellinger will still make his return? Will they go out there and get, Shota Imanga, who's again, he's available until the 11th of January. That's when his posting ends.
I think that with Craig Counsell just announcing his staff yesterday, it's okay, even with the terrible taste in their mouths from that late season collapse, for Cubs fans to take a breath, take a deep breath, kind of wheel it back and say, we sniped Milwaukee's best asset. Like, you sniped the Milwaukee Brewers' best asset, not named Corbin Burns, really. Like, he was the driving force behind getting the Brewers back to the playoffs. The the furthest they made it was the NLCS, but still, Milwaukee was a perennial playoff contender that couldn't hit over 240 as a team. And Craig Counsell was a main reason for that. I lampooned the David Ross hire when it happened, and he ended up doing pretty well. And now you have a team that's set up for, right now, long-term contention. And then you're trying to engage pieces to put you over the top. So I'm okay with the Cubs playing it slow, because I think that even in an era where things swing fairly dramatically and GMs and ownership are trying to take those big dramatic 1-year swings, see the Mets. I think it's okay for right now if you don't get any of the big name free agents on the market, unless, if you shut, like really Gabe said it, the market is at a standstill. I'm not sure exactly why, but if you want to try and wait until guys get desperate and then make a move on a Blake Snell or even a Jordan Montgomery, then you bolster your team in a place where they could use it and still go forth with a team that is going to be, 1, watchable, 2, I think, contend, and 3, you're going to be making money in a positive way. You're not just making money by putting putting stuff up flashy or trying to get one or guys who are known names who are just veterans on 1-year deals or something like that. You're building something for the long term. So I maybe it's because I'm looking at the other side of town and saying, well, what could possibly be worse than this? But I think the Cubs are doing okay.
Yeah, and no, and I get what you're saying. Definitely, that is true, and that some teams have gone for the 1 year and all that, and that hasn't worked out. Plus, I mentioned to Miles last week, is that I'm sure Cubs fans don't necessarily want to hear it, but what if the Cubs are waiting for the next year's free agents like a pool, because they has Jose Altuve, it has Pete Alonso, like it's a stacked free agent class, and so maybe they're doing that, but at the same time, I think they also have other ways that they could be spending, right? And that's using their, minor league currency. So it's like it seems like they've been hesitant to do that. It seems like they're coveting guys, which, on one side, I understand why, but then on the other, I'm like, if you have it, why not, go out there and make some deals, especially for Glasnow. I mean, Glasnow is officially, with him signing the extension with the Dodgers, he's officially the new Jake Peavy. When the Cubs fans were talking about like getting Jake Peavy for like 3 years or something like that, 3 off seasons, it felt like, and it never happened. So when he was in his prime, so it it's what it feels like, and I think that's I don't understand, but I think also, so I do understand the aspect as well, to where some teams are probably asking for a little too much, that they don't want to, for proven talent. I think, for example, like in the Mets deal, I believe they wanted Christopher Morel as a centerpiece with other prospects. It looks like the Cubs don't want to move him, which, I mean, I understand why, and I'm okay with that. Obviously, Miles definitely doesn't want to see him go, so I agree with that. Like, I'm fine with him because he's proven something at the big league level. But other guys, like, as much as I'm not sitting here say trade Cade Horn, trade Pete Crow Armstrong, I'm not saying that, but I think to be a little more flexible, I think, is one thing that I would like them to do, just because you don't get this opportunity when you have guys with this much value that haven't done anything yet. And you got to do something with some of them, and I think they have a lot of minor league stars to where you could do a lot of movement without getting rid of guys like a Horton or Crow Armstrong. So yeah, I think the one thing about Jed Hoyer is that he did move in silence with Craig Counsell, some of the movements he's been doing, hopefully that's what he's doing now. And now that the coach, maybe they were waiting for the coaching staff to be established, maybe they go out there and make some deals. But Miles, what has been your overall thoughts lately on the Cubs and just in general of the direction they're going in? And also just like, you think in the last week, I mean, with, like, we talked about the Blue Jays getting Kevin Kiermaier, the Bellinger market has been quiet too. Any type of, like, what do you think is more likely, the Cubs get Bellinger or go out there and get Imanaga, excuse me?
I think that it's so funny because some of my thoughts and opinions have changed since the last episode in terms of, I think we are still in on the Belly sweepstakes, but I also think that Jed Hoyer might be very invested in the future as well, because we got a lot of young guys coming up. We saw a handful of them come up this past season, so I think he's trying to weigh how he wants to move going forward. If we lock in Belly for a few years, and we have Happ and Suzuki, and Pete Crow Armstrong, I think you got to kind of ask yourself, what does that mean for a player like Kevin Alcantara or Alexander Canario? I think there's some very calculated, conversation going on. And so I think that's why we're kind of seeing a standstill, because the future does look very bright for the Cubs. We have a lot of young assets that are coming up, and I'd even mention pitchers like Cade Horton and Luke Little. It goes on and on. So I think, it's just a matter of how, the Cubs front office wants to approach this. Do you want to invest into, short term and kind of let the prospects grow a little bit more in the minor leagues and maybe give them another 3-4 years and we try to win now? Or we kind of bank on some of these dudes a little bit sooner and bring them up, and, we hope this thing meshes going forward. So could I see us bringing in Belly and a few other free agents? Yes. But at the same time, I'm starting to understand. I would not be as mad if we don't, but I also hope, we understand what we're going into the season with and what went wrong last year. So hopefully we address those things during spring training, and we don't collapse at the end of the year. Or if things don't work out this year, kind of like what Gabe said, we know we can't be surprised if certain things don't pan out by the end of the season. But then again, it depends on how we're playing, right? What moves we're going to make at the deadline? What are we going to do at that point? That we didn't do during the winter. So for me, I can kind of see like a culmination of things that'll take place. So I'm a little more patient with this ball club as I've kind of let this sit with me a little bit, but I'm hoping that it is addressed. I'm hoping that maybe he does say some things at the Cubs convention, because fans are going to ask him. We're all curious. What's the strategy going into 2024? So optimistic. I think we all just want to know how are you going to do this? I don't think that there's a wrong way in a sense, but I do want to know, okay, well, what is the plan? We don't want to be left in the dark. I think that's one of the worst things you can do. But Jed Hoyer doesn't do that, but he does move very, very silently. He'll surprise us at times, but I think it's good to kind of keep the fans informed to an extent.
Yeah, and definitely, I mean, when I think about these things and like him being like, it being at a standstill is what I want to say, and not standing pat in general for the Cubs is kind of like, I feel like they waited a little too long to deal some of the guys that, like Chris Bryant, Rizzo, and all that stuff. Like they waited too long on certain things and certain moves in general, because it wasn't working. I mean, they from 2018 to 2021 or from 2020, it wasn't really working. So overall, it's one of those things where I'm just like, well, are they trying to be a little more careful now, or what are they exactly trying to do? So it just makes me kind of think about those things. But Gabe, what are your thoughts on what has been going on lately, and just kind of what you think the Bellinger market is, and all these guys that are still left out there, because there's still plenty of players out there, and Blake Snell is still out there. So what has been your thoughts overall, man?
I mean, from people that I'm talking to that's informed and in the business, I know that they still in the play for Cody Bellinger.
Mm-hmm.
That much I can 100% confirm to you. I don't know if they're going to re-sign him.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should re-sign him, because even if he isn't in your future in the outfield, you could play him at first base,
mm-hmm.
which has been a weakness for your ball club. And that's why you had him playing first base near the dog days of the regular season into the
should have kept Rizzo.
Right, hey, they could have, but you gave him up. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. And he's enjoying his life in New York right now, where he's on the Stack Ball Club. But yeah, like you got Cody, you can get him. But my problem is why haven't you addressed the starting pitching?
Mm-hmm.
I know who your top 3 arms are. I know you're bringing Hendricks back. I know you're bringing Talion back. I know you're bringing Justice Steele back. But with Marcus Stroman gone, you're going to have to rely on now Javier Assad, Drew Smiley, Jordan Wicks, and Hayden Wisniewski in either your 4 or 5 spots. Those guys are basically competing for those last 2 spots. Blake Snell is out there. Why aren't you in the running for him? everybody wants to say, well, we as fans want to be informed. I got bad news for you. You're never going to be informed in this type of market when dollars and cents is what it's all coming down to. That's why you're seeing the standstill right now. It's about that paper. And pitching right now, you gotta pay for it. You gotta pay a premium price.
We're going to invest in these young guys or whatever the case may be. So, yeah, please, Jeff,
Yeah.
for the love of God.
Yes, yeah, seriously. I mean, it's one of those things where also, as Gabe said, with the pitching and all that's the one thing too that they have the options, and I mean, of going out there and getting a guy. I mean, Imanaga. I mean, I feel like that would have been it's a great would be a great acquisition. He's 30 years old. I guess his deal. I saw today that probably going to be around 100 mil. But I mean, nowadays, I mean, what is that to a club, especially with and being a lefty? I'm sure he can give you 6 or 7 solid seasons. So I mean, we'll see what happens in that end of things. But one of the things I did want to get to before we wrap things up is one of the bigger deals that has happened over the last week, and that's the Braves getting Chris Sale and sending Vaughn Grissom to the Red Sox. And I think with all the questions of Alex Anthopoulos and what he's been doing the Braves, because honestly, you look at their transaction list and it's I don't even know what adjective to use, because there's just so much going on there. I mean, they had to deal with the White Sox, Max Stassi. Some people said they were making room for Chris Sale because obviously they're paying some of his deal. I know Red Sox are paying for most of it, but they're paying for some of his deal. And then, of course, next year, if they pick up the $20 million option, maybe that's what, they're trying to do, whatever. But some of these deals are so random. I do like, obviously, the Kelnick. We talked about that one. The David Fletcher one, add some depth to the bench. And obviously, he's a guy that, has always been, touted as a contact king. So, he's out there with a great bat. So, what do you guys think? What did you guys think about the deal? Gabe, we'll start with you. What did you think about this Chris Sale trade and what it means to each team? Because a lot of people think that regardless of what happens, the Red Sox won this deal because, one, to get Chris Sale out for the most part. Obviously, they're paying for it this year, like I said, but they get him off the team, they get him off of the salary. But then also, Vaughn Grissom is a great young talent that is finally gonna get like a big opportunity to start. Obviously, he was blocked with the Braves. So people think that, the Red Sox have won it. But I will say this, if Chris Sale can be healthy and be the Chris Sale, I mean, we saw him last year, even, with the short period of time that he was healthy with the Red Sox, he pitched well. Like, imagine how much better that makes the Braves, because obviously, I feel like their rotation is one of those rotations that is really top heavy. But the rest is still kind of maybe up in the air of what they're going to give you. But what did you think about this deal and what it does for each of the teams?
I like it for Vaughn Grissom for the reasons that you alluded to. Boston gets a player that for the first time in his career is not going to be blocked, and they can put in his short and the middle infield beside Trevor Story and seek to, go to work with in the American League East division. That'll be tough. I also like it for Chris Sale in Atlanta. I mean, Chris Sale, everybody talks about his contract, but in current baseball contracts, his contract really isn't the worst contract. He just gets hurt most of the time, and he has been able to live up to it. Well, I'm not going to say that. I take that back. He won a World Series with that, so I'm not going to say that. But for him, it's a move. It's a great move for a lot of reasons. One, he's from Florida, so he's not far from home. He's going to a Brave team that is stacked. And if you do like the paperwork or do the projections, he'd be like their fourth starter. So, imagine if you're getting quality starts left and right from him and he's fully healthy, besides a Max Fried and a Spencer Strider and a Charlie Morton, man. That's going to give Snickers so many options when it comes to, playoff time with arms and whatnot. So, I like that move a lot. I really don't mind what the Braves are doing because they're adding depth. And yeah, they're cutting money in some places, but I think it's rather obvious as to why they're doing that, because at some point in time, they're going to have to pay number 13. So, they know they got to do that, but most importantly, they're adding depth, even though they're cutting money, and still trying to win with signing guys on long-term deals. So I think what Atlanta's done has been pretty smart.
Yeah, no, yeah, the way they've done things definitely, cost efficient and setting up for the future. I mean, damn. I mean, they definitely are set up for the future. So, yeah, no, that you're definitely right on that. So, Miles, what did you think about this deal and kind of what it does? I mean, as Gabe said, the positives with Vaughn Grissom and Chris Sale, just getting a change of scenery, and maybe he can go out there and give you 150 innings or something like that. I think that would be a win. I mean, it's like a guy like last time as well. It's like, you tell me you're going to get like 160, 180 innings. Like that's, that'd be crazy, but just because they haven't been able to do much of that in the last few years. But what do you think about this deal, man?
Hey, I love it. I love it for the Braves specifically because I think, kind of like that change of scenery, especially in an environment like that and on a ball club like that, I think winning and playing well could be very contagious. I think weird, things have come out about the Red Sox, and I don't know what was going on behind the scenes in terms of players feeling like the management, the ownership was kind of gave up, and and really right now I'm referencing what Alex Verdugo said in one of his interviews when he signed with the Yankees. So I think being on a ball club in which not only is this team established, they are very committed to going out and kicking some butt this year, which they're going to do. I don't think the Braves are going to be worse. They're just going to be just as good as they were last year. I like it a lot. I like it a lot. And I also like the Red Sox are also getting something back as well when it comes to Vaughn Grissom. So I think it's a great deal all around. I think the Braves really don't need much in terms of getting better, but I think this is a great bolster, and if you can get a healthy season out of Chris Sale and even have him go at least 5 or 6 a game to maybe avoid injury, because we know that he has been injury prone in his career, that'd be great. That'd be great. And I think this man is absolutely lethal from the left side.
Oh yeah, I agree, and I think the Braves. I mean, they're just as stacked. They haven't really lost anyone major in that sense. So like, I don't. Yeah, they're going to be back where they're at, and it's going to be a battle. And those games between them, and the Dodgers are going to be insane. But Chris, what were your thoughts on that move and just kind of what it does for each team?
It's a lot of moving parts. I mean, but I think it's something that we've been talking about this whole podcast. That depending on how it works out. It's always going to look one way or the other via hindsight. But at this time, the Braves are willing to make these kind of complicated deals to get the players they want. They had to take on Marco Gonzalez and Evan White in those various deals to get Jared Kelenic, and then they moved those guys. They outrighted those guys. David Fletcher, maybe he'll finally be he's like a 1910s, 1980s player who was stuck on those Angels teams that the organization couldn't get anything right. And I think he's a quality ball player. And with the Braves, with actual thunder around him, he's going to be a guy that a bunch of analytics people and then Terry out in Lombard are going to be like, why can't the Sox or the Cubs have a guy like this who just gets on base and he's a batting average guy. We need a batting average guy. He's going to be one of those guys if things work out in Atlanta. So I get what you're saying, Saul, because when I looked at the transaction list, I thought it was odd too. But they didn't give up any big names. They've still got the guys who got them to the championship series and the postseason. If there's one thing I could say is that the Braves are probably in one of those moods, like all teams get into who have high expectations, especially in baseball, who haven't fulfilled it yet. Like you lose to your division rival 2 years in a row, that's going to hurt, to put it mildly. I know Miles has people in the office, so I'm not going to say what I might want to say.
Turn the headphones, don't worry.
They sounded like the Riddler on that Batman meme, man. They're like, how did they do it? I don't know. But I don't think they've panicked. They've made small bolstering moves. If Kelenic realizes his potential, then Fulton County looks great, or Cobb County looks great. If he doesn't, then you didn't spend a lot to get him. If Vaughn Grissom goes big in Boston, but like you said, Chris Sale pitches 150 innings, then you got your money's worth. If he doesn't, then hey, that's probably the one deal that they would look back on and say, well, man, we let Swanson go in free agency, and then we let the next man walk or go in a trade, and now we don't have a shortstop who could fill that spot. And shortstop, I think, is becoming a very, very, very key role in baseball, more than it has ever been in the history of baseball. That'd be the one thing that I think they could lose out on. But I think the Braves are doing all right, at least until they somehow lose to the Phillies again.
And the plus side about it too for the Braves is, even if it doesn't work out with Chris Sale, like you still have Smith Shawver in your farm system, who came up and got some starts last year. And then you got Hurst and Waldrop, who, like, that's one of Atlanta's biggest strengths in the farm system is their pitching. Like, you look at the top 10 prospects, damn near all of them are pitchers. They don't really have too many position players in their farm. So, like, right now, what's the worst that could happen? You got a guy that's a 7-time All-Star in your rotation beside a crop of other stars, Bryce Elder included, who I didn't mention. Hey, I like what they're doing.
Yeah, and embarrassment of riches is like not even enough. I feel like when you think about those teams like the Braves, Dodgers. So, yeah, they'll be fine ultimately. I mean, as Chris said, until they lose to the Phillies, and I mean, the Phillies are just a different animal. Like the Phillies are turning into those teams where you don't even care what they do in the regular season. It's just like, what if they sneak in with 83, 84 wins? It doesn't matter that they have a shot to go to the World Series. And one more thing I did want to mention too is, as Gabe said, with the Diamondbacks and what the Cubs are not doing, what the Diamondbacks are doing. I do agree with that in that sense that the Diamondbacks re-signed Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and then they, signed Eduardo Rodriguez. Like, they're making moves. They're not going anywhere. I don't think by no means are they scared of the Ohtani monster in the Dodger with the Dodgers. So like that's one thing that, as you mentioned, that as I like seeing. And those battles between the Diamondbacks and Dodgers, no matter who's on those teams, are always good. And they're only going to get better. So definitely love to see it. So, but I think it's a good place to wrap things up for this edition of the At Bat Podcast, episode number 80, 20 away from 100 here in this new year, which we'll get to in 2024. So I want to thank Chris Pennant for joining us. Again, congrats on the Jeopardy finishing in the finals. And then as well as catch all Chris Pennant's shows with the CHGO and, of course, the upcoming Chicago Sky season and the Skyhook Podcast as well. Gabe Wilkins, of course, with his podcast, The State of Gabe. I want to thank my co-host, Miles Porter, as well, as he gets ready for his Milwaukee Jaguars season. Another MVP year for Miles Porter incoming.
Go, baby.
Yeah. So I want to thank
everyone watching.
Hell yeah. So make sure everyone keeps up with War Media as well as, with our Sports Zone collaboration with the Bears Den. And check us out there. And we got other bigger things coming in 2024. So everyone, I appreciate you guys watching. And hopefully everyone has a great 2024.